Stephen and the Big Problem. Stephen the Rocket is a new engine to the island of Sodor. He likes to do his work on time, and it always pleases the Fat Controller. He is always very quick and really useful, and he gets his jobs done really good, and he was always in perfect time. One day, Stephen was shunting some fuel tankers to take to the oil depot. He was shunting them around the line. He was working ever so hard. He reached the hill in which he found was very difficult. He pushed the tankers so hard, and he finally reached the top of the hill. Suddenly, there was trouble ahead. Stephen was still concentrating on shunting the fuel tankers, and then there was trouble. There was a crack on the track, and the track on the bridge was broken, and the bridge was so full of cracks. Suddenly, the fuel tankers crashed into the barriers of Shake Shake Bridge, and they fell into the ravine below. They exploded, and the fuel tankers exploded, and fire laid everywhere. Stephen was very surprised. His driver and fireman were very concerned. "This is our fault," they said. We didn't know that this bridge was unsafe. We have to call the fire brigade." "It's already too late," said the fireman. "The Fat Controller will be very annoyed." And he was. He was at first, but not anymore. He told the engines all about it. The stone bridge is unsafe, and no one is allowed to use it. My men are going to be fixing it for a while. And he walked away. Molly was very delighted with what Stephen had done. Good thing you weren't concentrating," she said. "It's all your fault for this bridge being on fire," she said. "Looks like you're scared of the bridge this time, Stephen," she said. You're not even learning well." Stop telling him that," said Donald. It wasn't Stephen's fault. It was those fuel tankers," said Douglas. "They weren't watching where they were going, you know, Molly, and you should know that by now. Stop making fun of Stephen." Molly was annoyed. "I don't care," she said. "Stephen wasn't watching where he was going anyway." "Yes, I was," said Stephen. You should know that it was an accident," said Stephen. "I don't care," said Molly. "I'm off for a while," and she pushed away. "I'm sorry Molly was teasing you, Stephen," said Donald. It's all right," said Stephen. "In my old railway, all the engines used to tease me sometimes, and I used to stick up for myself about it." "Well, we're sticking up for you now," said Douglas. "We're friends," said Stephen, and the twins agreed with Stephen on this one, and Stephen felt proud. At the next day, he was taking some passengers on a day out. Stephen was still worried about the bridge from before, and he kept thinking about it. His driver and fireman were worried about him. They were worried that something bad might happen to him. The passengers were enjoying their trip, but Stephen was still thinking about the bridge being on fire, and Stephen was so worried about it. He reached the station at last. The passengers were going home, and Stephen puffed slowly away from the station. The evening began, and Stephen told Donald and Douglas about the stone bridge being on fire yesterday. "I'm worried about it," said Stephen. What if it will happen again?" "Don't worry about Molly," said the twins. You've got us to stick up with. Just take the notice of Molly for a while, and then things will be okay. I hope so, said Stephen, and with that, the four shut their eyes and went to sleep. The next day later, the Fat Controller came to see the three engines. He was worried about something. Molly is missing, he said, and I want you all to search for her. Yes, sir, right away, sir, said the twins and Stephen, and the twins went to the yard to find Molly. And Stephen didn't know that he was going somewhere to find Molly. And he was on his way. He went past by Welfare Station. Stephen looked everywhere for Molly, and Molly was nowhere to be found. He went up the bridge. He knew it was the way. It was the same way to the bridge. He accidentally put the fuel tankers on, and then Stephen shoved slowly onto the bridge. He didn't know that the bridge was mended now, and Stephen was still worried. Suddenly, Stephen shoved slowly. Then there was even more worse to come. He shoved slowly and wisely, and then there was a big bump. Someone bumped him. Bambling track, said Stephen. What was that? He fell off the bridge and into the mud. Stephen was wet through, and he was so full of mud. went the giggle. It was someone who Stephen didn't know. Who was that? Me, said Molly in a familiar tone. How dare you? said Stephen. Don't you ever scare me like that again, he said, and he was very cross with Molly. At last the Fat Controller, Douglas and Donald found Stephen at the muddy river, and they found Molly as well. The Fat Controller spoke severely to what Molly had done. You have caused a big disturbance, said the Fat Controller, and you have caused confusion and delay. You will owe Stephen an apology, and you will go to the sheds and think about your behaviour. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir, said Molly. I'm sorry, Stephen, said Molly. I am so sorry for what I have done. For your next punishment, said the Fat Controller, you will shunt trucks in the yards to make you think about what you have done today, and you will explain everything. Yes, sir, sorry, sir, said Molly. Molly knew she was in trouble, and she puffed sadly away. The Fat Controller spoke kindly to Stephen. You have been a very brave engine. As a reward, you will be repainted at the works. Thank you, sir, said Stephen. He smiled happily. He knew it was that it was the greatest reward for him ever. And Douglas and Donald were happy too. The Fat Controller was proud of the three engines, and Stephen was proud of himself too.